Recently, I've been making a big push towards getting legend rank within the Go Battle League, and to help me get there, I've been using one team in particular. This team is what I like to call the secret weapon team, mainly because there's one or two Pokemon that are going to be extremely difficult to counter. I'm going to be talking about this team in detail within this video. Let's get right into it. Hey, how's it going everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokemon Go video. Today we're going to be talking about PvP, which I totally understand that not everyone is going to be into. But if you're someone who's getting into PvP, then the team that I'm going to be talking about might be worth going after. The reason why I say that is because each of the Pokemon on this team are not that difficult to get. And on top of that, this team is going to get you a lot of wins, and it's almost guaranteed because of how powerful it is. Right now, during the Catch Cup, it's actually doing really well because of some of the Pokemon that players are commonly using. But I do think this team has a lot of potential within the Great League because all of the Pokemon within it definitely do really well, and they also cover each other. To better understand this, let's go over each of the Pokemon on this team in detail. The first Pokemon I want to talk about is going to be Lickitung. This Pokemon is a pure normal type, which means it's only going to have one weakness, which is, of course, fighting types. But it's also going to have a double resistance to ghost types, so if you're struggling against a bunch of ghost type Pokemon, this Pokemon is going to be your one answer. Lickitung has base attack stats that are going to be on the tanky side. It has a base attack stat of 108, a base defense stat of 137, and a base stamina of 207. Lickitung is also one of those Pokemon that's going to be under the 1500 limit when you completely max it out with Candy XL. But in order to achieve this, you will want to get rank 1 IVs. The best IVs for Lickitung within the Great League is going to be 8 attack, 14 defense, and 15 health. Lickitung is unfortunately not going to be good in any other league aside from the Great League, so do keep that in mind. Now when it comes to Lickitung's attacks, I would go with Lick as its fast attack, and Power Whip and Body Slam as its charge attacks. Body Slam is going to be the absolute best move on Lickitung. On top of it dealing a lot of damage, it's also spammable because it doesn't require a lot of energy. The unfortunate thing is that Body Slam is going to require an elite charge TM. So if you do not have yourself a Lickitung with Body Slam, then you will have to invest one of those charge TMs. But pairing it up with Power Whip is going to make it incredible because Power Whip does give Lickitung a lot of type coverage, which you're going to need for this team in particular. Basically, Lickitung is going to be incredibly powerful within the Go Battle League. There's very few Pokemon that can answer it efficiently, and it's going to be the perfect answer against a lot of commonly used Pokemon. The one thing is that Lickitung does have a lot of hard counters, namely Medicham and Scrafty, but if you come across those Pokemon, then there is an answer on this team, which is going to be Shadow Gligar. In case you didn't know, Shadow Gligar is in the top 5 when it comes to the Great League meta, and there's a good reason for that. First, this Pokemon has an incredibly unique type combination, which is ground and flying. This only gives it 2 weaknesses, which is going to be ice and water. You will want to watch out though, because when it comes to ice types, it's going to have a double weakness. But to offset those weaknesses, it also has plenty of resistances. It's going to have a double resistance to ground and a regular resistance to bug, electric, fighting, and poison. Now in terms of Shadow Gligar's base stats, it's going to lean more heavily on the offensive side. It's going to have a base attack stat of 143, which is going to be boosted by 20% because of the Shadow bonus, and it also has a defense stat of 184, which is going to be nerfed by 20% because of the Shadow bonus, and it also has a base stamina of 163. In terms of the rank 1 IVs for Shadow Gligar, you will want one that is 0 attack, 15 defense, and 15 health. Of course, getting PvP IVs for this Pokemon is going to be incredibly difficult because it's currently only available from raid battles and you cannot trade it. However, as long as you have close to 15 defense IVs and 15 stamina IVs, you're going to be okay. Now, the reason why Shadow Gligar is commonly used right now is because of its moveset alongside its high attack. It's going to have the fast attacks Wing Attack and Fury Cutter, with the obvious choice being Wing Attack. And in terms of its charge attacks, it can come with either Dig, Aerial Ace, and Night Slash. Dig and Aerial Ace are going to be the best charge attacks on this Pokemon. Having the combination of Wing Attack, which generates a lot of energy, with Dig and Aerial Ace as its charge attacks, this Pokemon is basically going to be unstoppable. And then finally, rounding out this team is going to be Lanturn. This Pokemon has a duo type combination of water and electric, which means it's going to be weak against ground types as well as grass types. But it's also going to have a double resistance to steel types and a regular resistance to fire, flying, ice, and water. Now in terms of Lanturn's base stats, it's going to have a base attack stat of 146, a base defense stat of 137, and a base stamina stat of 268. The rank 1 IVs are going to be 0 attack, 13 defense, and 14 health. Now in terms of the fast moves, Lanturn is going to perform best with Spark, but a good alternative is also Water Gun, especially if you're going up against a lot of Pokemon that are going to be weak against water types. Now in terms of the charge attacks, the obvious ones you will want to go with is going to be Surf and Thunderbolt. Surf is a spammable move, and Thunderbolt is an energy efficient nuke, so if you're going to be using this Pokemon, make sure you go with this move combination. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that this team is really easy to construct, and that is definitely true. When it comes to Lickitung and Lanturn, those are actually some pretty common spawns. Lickitung is a Pokemon that actually can be in a nest, so if you happen to find a Lickitung nest, it's definitely worth farming up this one particular Pokemon just because of how powerful it can be within the Go Battle League. Now when it comes to Lanturn, that is another common spawn that you will typically see. Lanturn is the evolved form of Jinsula, which is a very common Pokemon that you typically see, even if there is an in-game event. So make sure you're catching as much of those as you can, because if you come across one with PvP IVs, you will definitely want to hold on to it and invest into it. Depending on what your team needs, you can give it either Water Gun or Spark, and it's going to perform really well. On top of that, there's not a lot of Pokemon that will directly counter this Pokemon. Yes, it is susceptible to grass types and ground types, but that's why you have both Shadow Gligar as well as Lickitung. Let's say they throw in a Trevenant as an answer to Lanturn, then you could bring out Lickitung to completely decimate that Pokemon. Or you could bring out Shadow Gligar as well, as that Pokemon is going to deal an insane amount of damage against anything that counters Lanturn. Seriously, this team is extremely well-rounded, and I really cannot emphasize enough just how powerful it can be in Pokemon Go's Great League. And then finally, the third Pokemon is of course Shadow Gligar. This one is going to be pretty easy to get considering that it is a common Shadow Raid boss, but of course it's going to be really difficult to get PvP IVs of this Pokemon. But if you happen to get yourself one that is at least decent IVs for the Go Battle League, then I would still invest into it. And then of course, whenever the next Team Go Rocket Takeover event happens, make sure you TM away frustration on all of your Shadow Gligar. Seriously, during this season, Shadow Gligar has been an absolute menace, and right now with the Catch Cup, it's actually one of the most powerful Pokemon you can have. There's a lot of Pokemon that players are commonly using right now that Gligar completely decimates. Let's say your opponents go into Clogsire, then you should have Shadow Gligar as an answer. If they're bringing out Skeledirge, Gligar is going to completely destroy it. This is a seriously very powerful Pokemon, and you do not want to ignore its potential. But of course, just like Lanturn, it does have some direct counters that you will want to watch out for. Pretty much any water type with Mud Shot is definitely going to be a problem if you're using Shadow Gligar, like for example Lanturn, Quagsire, and Swampert. All three of those Pokemon are going to be incredibly difficult to deal with Shadow Gligar, so make sure you're switching your Pokemon correctly, because if you get your Gligar caught out, it's going to make your wins a lot harder to get. Really, you want to use Shadow Gligar as the Pokemon to catch out your opponents rather than having your Gligar get caught out. It's unfortunately not a good safe switch, so if you're ending up in an unfavorable lead, I would just stay with it and just see if you can build up energy with Shadow Gligar once you switch into it. It's definitely going to be a heavy hitter, but it's not going to be the number one answer to a bunch of those Pokemon. But yeah, speaking of number one answers, I would say Lickitung is going to be the standout with this team. It's typically one of the best switches in the game, but I'm currently using it as the lead for this team. You could kind of interchange it with Shadow Gligar in terms of what role it has on the team, but right now I've been having the best results with this Pokemon in the lead position. But I think that's mainly because of the Catch Cup with all of the Quagsire leads that a lot of players are using. Seriously, if you can catch out Pokemon like Swampert and Quagsire with Lickitung, they're going to have a very difficult time. The only problem is Lickitung gets hard countered by quite a few Pokemon that are out there, but most of those Pokemon are going to be weak against Shadow Gligar or Lanturn. So yeah, this team has a lot of answers to a lot of different team combinations, and it's going to be versatile, which I think is its core strength. But yeah, in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Now, I'm pretty sure there's going to be players out there who are going to say this team is weak, especially against their own teams, and if that happens to be you, I would love to know what your team is down below. Let's have a great discussion around PvP, because I do think this is one of the most underrated aspects of Pokemon Go. And thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. If you ended up enjoying it and found it to be informative, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, big or small, then make sure you go and check out the links in the description below. For all my patrons, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list. So if you want to interact with me in some way within Pokemon Go, like with remote raids or the friendship system, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. Also, if you want to support my channel without spending any money, you can do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula, and I'm on the platforms on your screen. Alright, and that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.